Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another episode of Total War Arena. So we're going to be taking a look at all 4 branches of the cavalry today. It's probably going to turn into quite a long video, I suspect, so you may wish to skip forward to the battles if that's just what you're interested in. But we're not going to go on too long at the start. So basically, I just wanted to have a look at basically each of the different nations' cavalry, so barbarians, Romans, Greeks, and Carthaginians, because there's obviously each faction has its own sort of specific cavalry tree, and each of them has their own specific traits. And I think as for newer players, and even some players who haven't unlocked all the commanders yet, because obviously they're really expensive, it can be a bit confusing to know how each of the different cavalry branches plays, because they all have very specific traits and they're all quite different. And that's kind of what I wanted to answer in this video, by looking at each of them individually and just sort of seeing what their main traits are and how they compare with the other branches, so you can find the one that suits your playstyle. So obviously we have the barbarians. I'm just going to be running them with sort of what we consider to be the sort of base commanders. Obviously some of them have multiple commander options, but for example the barbarians, I'm going to be running them here with Arminius, since that's the starting commander and probably the most common choice. We have the Romans, who I'll be running with Scipio. Obviously some people do run them with Sulla, but you know, it's just a standard choice. I'm going to be running them with Scipio. The Greeks, obviously, with Alexander, with his amazing charges, and the Carthaginians with Hasdrubal, obviously, with his buff and debuff abilities. I'm going to be running them all at tier 5, because that's a tier where a lot of the cavalry in their trees kind of are fairly representative of how they play out through the later tiers. It's also a tier where the first tier where all the branches actually have access to the cavalry. For example, the Carthaginians actually unlock the cavalry at tier 5 along with the Romans, whereas the Greeks get it at tier 3 and the barbarians from tier 1. So they all have different sort of starting places. I think we'll probably start off with the barbarians, since Arminius is one of the 3 commanders you get when you first start the game, and probably the most common cavalry unit we see in the game is the barbarians. So what are they all about? Barbarians are all about their mobility. That's their overriding factor, is their insane movement speed. It even got nerfed a patch or two back to sort of reduce this down, but it's still really impressive how fast they actually go. Take a look at their base movement speed. You get an 8.1 base, but through a combination of sort of upgraded equipment like these trousers, which I'm guessing give plus 5%, and consumables, I'm getting another 0.9 onto that to bring them up to a base 9 meters a second movement speed, which is already faster than probably anything else you're going to encounter on the battlefield. On top of that, with Arminius, we're going to get a 19% movement speed buff with momentum, and if we've got our infiltration on, we get another 5% as well. So we can expect to be going around 11, maybe 12 meters a second in the open with these guys, which is so much faster than, say, the Roman cavalry, which I think we're going to be expecting around the 7-8, similar for the Greeks, and maybe 8 to 9 for the Carthaginians. So you can easily outrun any other cavalry, and that gives you all the tactical options in terms of picking and choosing your fights. You're not forced to engage anyone unless you want to, because you have sort of all the movement speed to pick and choose. And that's probably why these barbarian cavalry are a really popular choice, particularly in the later tiers, because, as I say, you have those options, and that's kind of really important. They have sort of a reasonable-ish charge, and they're not sort of as good as the Greeks on the charge in terms of either their impact damage, which is their ability to do damage on the charge, and their charge impact, which is their ability to win charges, which is actually quite low as a general rule, the charge impact. So just to explain this very quickly, charge impact, as I say, that's the chance to win a charge. So if these barbarian cavalry here charged at, say, some Greek cavalry, which will have a much higher charge impact, then if both charged at the same time, the barbarians would lose. Because, yeah, if you look at the Greek charge impact, it's 290, which is far higher than the barbarians' 250. So therefore, the barbarians would lose that charge and take damage. So that's why you've got to be careful about picking which enemy cavalry you charge head-on against. You know, the barbarians need to be able to sort of flank, get around and side charge the Greeks to try and get that damage in without facing them head-on. That's kind of one of the weaknesses. Once they get into hand-to-hand, they're not as terrible as the Greek cavalry are in hand-to-hand, but they aren't as good as, say, the Romans, which have got really good armour and good offensive capabilities. So there's kind of that middle ground, which again, kind of makes them pretty nice. Medium charge, medium aggression, and high mobility is what barbarians are all about. So let's hop into our first battle with these barbarians then, and so just see how we get on, and we'll talk a bit more about them in the battle. So we have just loaded into our first battle with our barbarian cavalry. I'm probably just going to go over on this flank on Oasis because you get sort of a bit more open ground here where you can sort of flex that movement speed a little bit more. It's not the best map for Barbarians because, as I said at the start, they're all about that movement speed, that flexibility, that manoeuvrability, and kind of the relatively confined nature of this map can make it pretty hard to sort of put that into action. But this is probably the best area to start anyway, so we'll just sort of see what we encounter and see how we get on. I'm going to, straight at the start, pop my infiltration. Mostly down to the fact that I just tend to forget about it, so if I don't pop it straight away, I end up forgetting to turn it on later on in the game. So for me, I might as well just turn it on straight away. If we can get some early charges off, I'll probably go around this way to see what we can see. You can immediately see how fast we are. So with some slightly lower tier Barbarian Cavalry there, and we can see, oh, that's a real shame they didn't go that way. I would have liked to try to force this fight here. The risk of getting counter-charged here on this corner. I've actually managed to just about get that charge off. And then I'm going to turn around, you see here. Try and get in at the side. Not particularly greatly done, but we've kind of caught them in this trap. I'm going to go on with my frenzy and then use the relatively good aggression of these Barbarians to try and get damage of these guys as these are trying to pull through me now, you see, to escape. You're being hit by a little bit by some of the enemy artillery. And some enemy archers getting some damage in here. And some Gallic cavalry there. You've got to be careful of them. I'm just going to hang on a little bit longer, get that extra bit of damage in. I know I'm taking damage from the enemy cavalry, the enemy archers, but but it's worth it. And then I'm going to make for the long grass, because that should give us some visibility protection from those archers. Okay, well that was a good start to the game. You know, it was an easy 1k points straight off the bat. Just managed to catch those Barbarians there. See, that's one thing that is kind of worth pointing out, that you have a lot of manoeuvrability, as I've been banging on about with these Barbarians, but you're still got to be careful. If you get yourself caught in sort of a pincer action like that, it doesn't matter how good your manoeuvrability is. If both ends of that corridor are closed, then both ends are closed. You know, you can't get out without a fight. And I managed to catch them on the corner. That's kind of how that worked. See, that was not such a good fight there. I don't want to be getting involved in that because we're significantly outnumbered. There's spear infantry involved, and obviously you've got to remember that spear infantry get quite a large bonus versus cavalry, so we don't really want to be fighting them. There's some Celeres there, tier 5. There's some tier 5 Romans, and there's obviously some ranged units in that grass. So it gives us a few options. One, I'm a bit nervous about these tier 5 Romans because they're really tough and kind of quite hard to beat in hand-to-hand. Having said that, they're now relatively near friendly infantry, and they are going for friendly ranged units, so they need our help pretty promptly, I think. So I'm just going to spread my units out to charge off with those guys. Yeah, because now we've got all our friendly stuff coming in support. Suddenly it's not quite such an outnumbered situation, and I think it's going to be worth us assisting where we can. So they've gone in on Oath Perseverance. That's going to make them really hard to kill because they have really good body armor values. I'm going to go in for a frenzy here and just to see how we get on in terms of damage. It's going to be hard to say. You know, I'm just keeping a weather eye on the damage compared to them, compared to us. See, we're actually so far dominantly winning, but we're not really racking up much damage. But then equally, they're struggling to land hits against me. You see this many Gallic cavalry kicking around there. Our own spearmen are getting in now, a bit of friendly fire, and they're going to pull through as they're trying to get out by the looks of it. Or maybe they've realised that it's not going to work for them because we're struggling to pull through once they're in Oath Perseverance. One of the weaknesses of Scipio with the Roman cavalry is once you pop Oath Perseverance, it heavily slows down your movement speed. You see they get that minus 40% movement speed modifier. And of course that means they have a really hard time escaping from these sort of situations. They get pretty committed to fights, basically. As you can see, it's kind of the case here. We're really struggling to get much damage against them, although they're equally struggling to get damage against us. I think I'm going to call that quits at that there. And just get out while my units are in relatively good health still. Get momentum back on. We should pull ourselves out without taking too much damage, and then they leave them just to face down against those enemy infantry on their own. So let's just try and reform up our cavalry a little bit, get our units back, and see what else there is to do. Looks like this battle's turning quite strongly against us, to be honest. We'll put our infiltration back on because that has hit cooldown and come back on. And let's head over this way. There's some people there. There's also some Roman infantry protecting those guys up there. Tough. And then there's these slingers. Now there are some Iberian rebels here. I'm assuming are supposed to be the protection force for these slingers. Although I must admit they seem to be doing a relatively poor job of it. I'm going to get hit slightly here by these guys. I'm going to go for an early charge. Probably going to go for these archers more, to be honest. We've really spread our units now right across the map because we got clipped slightly by those Iberian rebels. Oh no, we're going to get countercharged. There's nothing I can do there and try and weaken the charge, soften the charge slightly, but that really didn't happen very easily. Okay, that was a painful charge. We got hit quite hard there by these Gallic cavalry, a tier 5 premium premium Carthaginian, sorry. You don't see these guys very often in battle. So we're now kind of committed to a bit of a hand fight, and to make it worse, we've got these enemy spearmen engaged in us as well. Now we have some friendly falksmen further up to the north, but we are in a bit of a flank situation now, so now we're kind of caught. Now I've got two choices. I can either stay in this fight and hope the support comes. I'm going to go for a break for it, which is a bit of a risk because I'm going to take a lot of damage pulling out of this fight, which is why I activated my just go charge them, sorry, while they're just happened to be in the way, a bit unfortunate. While I activated my mount kick first, you saw, to try and get knocked down on the enemy units and to give my units a chance of escaping. Looks like we've got some out, but I think they're going to rout there. That's unfortunate. So really, we've only made it out with one unit. Trying to avoid that archer fire there a little bit. So yes, that was a bit unfortunate. We managed to catch the archers, but then ultimately just got caught there by the enemy cavalry, which did a good job of catching me in that sort of situation. So, what have we got left that we can try and contribute? So there's still some enemy archers here, look. We're going to have a hard time getting onto them, though, I think. We are still a dangerous unit. These slingers here, not in particularly well protected. There's a couple of Gunganir chargers kicking around, which could be dangerous for us. Or we could go into the back of these spearmen.
Our men are under attack.
Kind of painful. Let's just get past those spearmen there and go around this way. Those guys are routing, so they're not a massive problem to me. Now, these Gunganir chargers here, these higher tier barbarians, are going to come along the bottom by the looks of it. Let's see if we can maybe bait out their charge. I know what they're wanting to do. They will outcharge me. They're higher tier, they've got really high charge impact, so they will beat me in a charge. We know those slingers are still there. They're playing it very safe. They're doing actually quite a good job because they're keeping themselves in the game. What I want them to do is commit to a situation. Either way, that's going to give me better options. So here they are. I want to try and get them to go for me, basically.
Our men are under attack.
I'm going to try and get them there. That's not an ideal situation. Ah, no, that was badly done. Oh, spears. I was trying to catch them there with my charge. It just wasn't quite enough to get the impact. Right, well, let's go after these slingers instead. Obviously, I'm not going to have a charge back. I'm going to take a little bit of damage on the way in, but we should be able to catch up with them. There, let's get in. Try and get some damage quickly. Let's go on with our frenzy. Obviously, my charge wasn't on cooldown, so I couldn't actually get a charge off against them. And we've got these multi-AD spearsmen coming after us. And luckily for these slingers, they kind of took the decision there to run away from their infantry support. Make sure I don't run too much into that wall, which was probably a bit of an error for them. See if we can get these guys dead and routing kind of quickly. Oh dear, enemy archers getting damage in. Wait, let's get out of the way of those charging infantry before they get any kills on me. It looks like this battle is unfortunately going significantly against us, but we have been able to get a reasonably good amount of damage in all in all. Go for that artillery crew there. Looks a little bit exposed. Oh, I got my charge back. Ah, didn't quite get it. Let's go for a mount kick. I think this is going to be our bitter end here, but we can try and see if we can kill this artillery crew. I think we'll probably have a hard time to get it, to be honest, given the amount of enemy stuff that's now coming in. Oh, we're going minus 39 morale. It's not going to happen. There we go. Unfortunately, I didn't get my charge back there just before the end, which was a bit unlucky. Sometimes it's just the way it is. So, unfortunately, we're not going to be winning this battle, but hopefully that kind of highlights some of the play styles of barbarian cavalry. That sort of extreme speed and mobility. You saw how you know, I was able to use my speed to quickly get into position, even flanking other barbarian cavalry, to quickly cut off retreats. You know, an ordinary cavalry wouldn't have been able to get from here round this corner quick enough. It's only because, you know, our allies did a good job pushing up here, and I was able to quickly nip round to seal off the exit. That sort of barbarian cavalry have that option to do that. And then also just in general, in zipping around the battlefield, it makes the whole battlefield seem a lot smaller for you than it does for anyone else, because you can swap sides, move around. If you go onto a flank and there's just too much there for you to deal with, you can just pull back, reposition and go at it again in a way that no one else actually can, you know. And that's kind of a pretty critical thing in this game. So the last of our units are just unfortunately getting finished off now, and then we're going to be taking it out onto a different cavalry unit to sort of see how we get on. We'll perhaps switch to the Greeks next, because they're the next lowest tier, coming in at tier 3 when they first get introduced. And I think they're kind of one of those units that plays very strangely and can
We will
be
rise again.
kind of hard to get the hang of at
Stronger
first.
than
So let's
ever.
take a look at them next. Once we load out of this battle, of course. Okay, cool. Obviously, getting our battle results. Yeah, wasn't too bad, but it could be better. Could have won. That would have been better, wouldn't it? So, loading in with Alexander, we're going to be taking a look at the Tier 5 Companion Cavalry. So, how do Greek cavalry compare to Romans? Well, they compare to Romans. Well, they do compare to Romans, but compared to the barbarians, because they are completely different. Now, Greek cavalry is all about the charge. And that is, and singularly, they're just the best charging cavalry unit in the game by a mile. Now, why is this? One, they have an insane charge impact, really high base at 290, but on top of that, there may be some equipped upgrades that affect that. No, it doesn't look like it, but you do get wedge. If you go into wedge formation, you're getting plus 22% charge impact, so you're going to be taking that already high charge impact even higher, and as you get into the higher tiers, this actually ramps up more and more, so you're always going to be dominating a charge. If these guys charge, then if they're in wedge, other than other Greek cavalry, of course, then you're always going to win that charge. And that's important because that gives you a certain degree of confidence and a certain threat level that makes it hard for other cavalry to get at you, because you can always beat them in the charge and do a lot of damage as well, so not to be underestimated. So that's one thing. However, sort of as a converse to that, they actually have really bad melee statistics. So why is this? So one, they're pretty low melee attack for cavalry, then their weapon damage is pretty mediocre, so that means they're often only just doing base penetration damage, so that 33. They do have some body armor, but of course, because they have no shield, you're missing all that shield armor, which means that in reality they're kind of pretty vulnerable, and it also affects their sort of more soft stats like their melee defense, because while they have a good decent melee defense, they're not getting that 30 or so shield melee defense that other cavalry units are going to have, and that means they're quite easy for enemy cavalry units to land hits on them. Combined with that, they also have a pretty low missile block chance at 55, means they're vulnerable to archers, and so they just kind of tend to collapse pretty easily once they're cornered or once they're boxed in, you know, with enemy cavalry. They do have one little trick up their sleeves though to kind of escape from those situations, and that is Anvil with Alexander, which causes a massive movement speed debuff to enemy units. That 80% movement speed debuff, which of course means that you should then be able to run away from even the fastest barbarian cavalry while that debuff is in effect. At this tier, it's obviously only on for 16 seconds, so it doesn't give you very long to make a decision, but if you want to try and escape from a fight, it's great to pop this. And of course you only need to pop it with one unit at a time, because it's an area of effect debuff, so if you just pop it with one unit, it will affect everyone surrounding that unit, so you don't need to pop it with all your units at once. You can pop it and then you've still got 2 spare to use if you need to later on, before this one has gone through its 100-second cooldown. I'm just running them with the Steeds consumable because it gives me that extra impact damage. It means I'm going to be doing more damage when I get those great charges off, and hopefully we can do some damage to them. So let's hop into our game and see how we get on with the Greeks. So we are loading in with our Greek cavalry. It's a bit of a better map for this, kind of some open plains going on here which may suit the Greeks. I think we're probably going to start off and activate our wedge straight away just to sort of see how we're getting on, because wedge is kind of one of those things that's kind of a bit hit and miss. You have the advantage of it bumps your charge impact, which makes you know you're definitely going to be winning all those charges, and it actually gives you a little bit of impact damage as well. I think like 6%, so it's nice, but it does kind of hinder your mobility and make your units a little bit funky in kind of their turning mechanics. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So just obviously it winds up, and then you'll see our units take on the wedge formation. But if I'm running this way and then want to turn around, it's just not the quickest thing. It's not so bad, but you try and get yourself around a corner, and you know you'll find that it can be pretty difficult to do, and it can sometimes mean your charges end up shooting off at funky angles and you kind of miss where you're aiming for, so it can be a bit hit and miss. But anyway, we are just going to push forward. Looks like we're in a tier 6 game. I see some tier 6 spearmen here, so we're going to be up against higher tier stuff, so we've got to be a bit careful. We do have a dash, which is nice. Just gives us that extra little bit of movement speed, but you can see with our dash we're getting 9, without we're walking about 8 meters a second. I think actually I'm probably going to leave back and just play around with one unit to start with. I'm still a dominant force, so there's no need for me to be excessively careful, and if I lose one unit, and obviously it's not my commander unit, then it's not the end of the world. I'm going to pan around this way just to make sure my units don't get caught by any enemy cavalry doing anything silly, and let's see and maybe try and play around with some of this enemy cavalry. This mounted warband, see if anyone wants to play a game with me. Ooh, getting into a bit of a bad position there because I'm out of sync with those Greeks. They're going to miss their charge though, and I'm going to turn around behind them And charge there.
Crush them.
You see, we win the charge. Really big damage there. Let's get straight in with that anvil. Okay, we've gone with that anvil, so that means they're now silenced and they can't escape, and our own infantry can close in. Nice. Okay, we've got one of them to rout, and you can see, you know, in that charge we did over 10,000 damage with one unit. Now, it looks like the enemy infantry are coming in, so it's time for us to bug out and our own infantry to take up the rest of the fight. But, you know, it's pretty easy to get that early damage in if people fall for what you want. You'll see I was careful to try and get my anvil off straight away, because anvil not only debuffs the enemy movement speed, it also silences them. So that means they can't use any of their commander abilities, which is exactly what we want to stop them from doing. So that worked really well for us. I'm just going to move you over there, I think. It's a bit unprotected down that flank there by the looks of things, and I don't want to get caught out by some enemy cavalry that I'm not expecting. So let's get our wedge back on. We've got some Roman cavalry kicking around in our bay, sort of around here. These guys I'm going to need to get a good charge off, because they're really strong hand-to-hand cavalry, which are going to be significantly better than us. Some of our friendly Greeks getting into the fight there. And there's some more Romans coming around the back. See my turn there? Bit hard to get the turn off. Go for the charge there. Straight through. And even these Romans that charged in afterwards ended up losing on the charge. Unfortunately, I've got myself into a situation now where I'm surrounded, which isn't so good. I'm bringing up my other units. I may get stuck into the fight. There's not really a lot I can do to get out of here. Not easily, because obviously my anvil is still in cooldown, but it looks like our friendly infantry are coming over, which is good. And we may have lost the unit, but we did get quite a lot of damage on them in the initial charge. You'll see, look, that damage we're now taking. Now we're surrounded. But we have got friendly support coming in. I think ultimately it's going to pay off, which is why I'm kind of accepted that the unit is just dead. But, you know, I can live with that. I'm going to bring you in down here. I saw our friendly guys went for a wedge. I'm trying to go for that little gap. See that little entrance there, so we don't hit too many allied units. It wasn't an amazing charge. I'll pull you out as well. But we got out with significantly less damage than we caused, and those guys are still caught in and amongst our own spearmen. So they lost, you know, the bulk of sort of 3 or 4 units there. So for our one, so I think it probably was a fair engagement, and we're up over 1,000 aggression, so we're not doing too badly given the start. So what's the situation now? So there's some enemy barbarians there, but they're excessively supported by 2 spearmen units, so we don't really want to be getting into a fight like that. It's a really close battle, so it's kind of an important time. There are all these javelins here, these velites, and we could get a lot of damage off against some of them. And the enemy cavalry certainly is starting to get depleted. Our Romans are kind of caught in there, but you know, I kind of understand why the Romans have gone for that fight, because these javelins are a real threat to us. And I think a nice early charge here is going to do us not too badly. Go for our anvil and then just pull ourselves straight out. I'm not sticking around for this sort of fight. Make sure our units are safe over here. Oh! Get our dash off before we get killed. We got caught by some of the enemy cavalry there. Really well played by those Romans. Oh, they did a fantastic job of that, actually. We would have got out quite clean if it wasn't for them. Now we're going to take some damage possibly here from a bit late on the charge, possibly. And we've still got our cooldown on our anvil. Okay, let's get our dash off and try and get ourselves out of here. Try and avoid that one. You see, we haven't taken too much damage yet. Pull this unit out as well, because we're being threatened by other units. So we're kind of being beaten onto a retreat here, but they're going to miss that charge. I'm confident of that. Okay. So, nice bit of wall going on there. So let's pull ourselves back and see the situation. We've got quite a lot of stuff coming on us and threatening us now. We've got some friendly elephants coming in, but it looks like we've got not that many enemy guys here for us to deal with. Oh, that was a bit early on the charge, although we're still going to get it, I think. Yeah, we did. It wasn't particularly well done, to be honest, that wasn't. We're going to get hit by these guys. It's going to hurt a lot more. Okay, you'll notice I've come out of wedge now because I just want that wider front until I get some hits across here. See, this is where Greeks are struggling now. I've not got so many opportunities. These Romans kind of know what they're doing, you see. Ooh, don't run into the wall. Let's get ourselves out of there if we can. You guys start to pull down over here. Wow, I'm at maximum capacity now trying to manage these units. Got these Falksmen coming in. You see, and while we are taking casualties from the enemy units... let's try and run these guys through the stakes. That'll give us some protection. Trying to deal with what we've got. And there's some friendly companions there as well, going against those enemy friendly Falksmen. Looks like we're capping at their base as well. Maybe in a good spot here. Okay, so what have we got left to deal with? Let's bring these guys back. It doesn't look like those Romans did follow. We've got the enemy Falconsman coming in. We're going to have to think about maybe staying around for a decap, because that could become an important part. Looks like our guys have got those enemy Celeres. I don't know if we're going to be able to cap out or not. I'm glad to get back in time for decaps. I'm not too worried about that. There wasn't that many of them. We should be able to finish this unit off with a charge. I like doing things like that. And there we go. We went out of the cap. Good job, team. That was a really tough fought game. We had a really good start. Being able to bait out some of that enemy cavalry, which sort of went for us thinking they could win, and then we were able to use our superior charge impact to get the win. After that, things started to go not quite so well. We got caught in a few bad positions. Some of that Roman cavalry started to play very well in the later game, keeping a few units spare so that when I made an engagement, they were able to come in behind me. But you see, with the combination of Anvil, yes, you do take some damage pulling out of fights, but you can actually still present a fair sort of tough attack without taking too much damage in those sort of situations. And when people don't play so well, then you can really take advantage of them, because if you can get a charge into sort of a nice clustered blob of 3 barbarian cavalry, you can do phenomenal amounts of damage, and that really starts to ramp up into the higher tiers as well. And the Greek charge just gets progressively stronger and stronger. You saw we're still able to get 1800 aggression. Not quite as good, but these guys still have a lot of potential still when played properly. So after the Greeks, we're going to be moving on to what's next, Carthaginians or Romans? We'll go for Carthaginians, because these kind of have some strange features about them that you might not be expecting and may tempt you to go for them. Now, the Carthaginian territory with cavalry is probably the most obscure in terms of the entire territory. If you just take a brief look at the actual territory as a whole, it changes around an awful lot. So at tier 5, the start of this territory, we get these sort of tribal spear cavalry. They have javelins, which they can throw, as a focus fire type ability. We'll be taking a look at that in the battle. And they're quite a light, fast cavalry with not great armour, but good charges and sort of relatively good hand-to-hand combat abilities. But then through tier 6 and tier 7s, we go on to this almost pseudo-Roman cavalry, this sort of professional Carthaginian cavalry and mercenary cavalry, which plays much more like a slow, heavy cavalry with sort of a better charge than the Romans, but not so good fighting ability. And people, myself included, tend to find this tier 6 and tier 7 a pretty brutal tier to play through, at least until you get the hang of it. And then at tier 8, we flick back to the sort of light tribal cavalry again, like at tier 5. Given javelins, quite fast, quite good charge impacts, much nicer to play. Then at tier 9, you go back to the heavies, and then for tier 10, you go back to the light tribal cavalry. So it's a really strange line in that it flicks from sort of this light tribal cavalry to heavy professional cavalry, to light tribal cavalry to heavy professional cavalry, and makes it kind of hard to play well or get used into the style of it. And on top of that, it also means that not very many of the equipment carries over down the territory lines. It kind of makes it quite a long grind, I find, or I have found so far. You see, I've got quite far with it. I'm onto the tier 9s with these guys now. But I still prefer the light tribal cavalry, like these tier 5s and the tier 8s, and I'm really looking forward to getting up the tier 10s, which has kind of enabled me to keep going down the grind. So these guys at tier 5, though, they get access to this thing called a Numidian Throw, which basically enables you to focus fire on a certain area of ground and just throw some javelins, like a Roman Peeler or something like that, and do damage against people. It's an infinite number of charges. It's just on a cooldown, on a 30-second cooldown, and it is quite a nice ability. Just got to be careful you don't get caught out with it. And more than that, the Carthaginians alone, at least up till tier 9s and 10s when you get ability swapping, are the only cavalry to have 2 charges. They get Hasdrubal's own flying column, a really short little 2-second charge, but it has a really short cooldown. And they also get a standard cavalry charge, a much longer charge but doing less damage. So that's really nice because it enables you to sort of bait and switch, and I'll try and hopefully show you this in the battle. So yeah, they have pretty average skills across the board and everything else. They have that base 8.7 movement speed, but with consumables and equipped, get that up to 8.8. And then when you use that with the double charge to sort of move yourself around the battlefield, you can get around at a decent speed. You'll be quicker than Roman cavalry, and you can probably expect to outrun Greeks in most sort of situations. Aggression-wise, they're pretty decent in combat, but not amazing, and they don't have a lot of body armor, but they do have shields, so they have some sense of a missile block chance, more than the Greeks at least anyway. So let's hop into our battle and see if we can cause some trouble with Hasdrubal. So we are loading in with our Carthaginians. I didn't do a particularly good job of paying attention. I kind of missed the starting spots I wanted to be in the front. But I'm going to go here in the back just so we get sort of this middle plane here. So obviously we want to make use of some of our flexibility, try and sort of outflank people, etc., etc. So let's form ourselves up. I'm probably going to say and start with a similar sort of trick as to the Greeks. So I'm probably just going to play around with one unit at the start. There's no the advantage of doing this is you can really focus in and micro that one unit. Which is obviously of benefit. I sometimes do this, I sometimes don't. I just kind of, no particular rhyme or reason why I vary it. I just sort of do. Sometimes I like to go up with all units, and sometimes I just go up with one. There are benefits to both cases. Sometimes it's better to be on scene with all your units in one place. If you know if you counter vulnerable range units, it's better to have your 3 cavalry units there. Sometimes it's just not. So, I think in this tier we get charge impact bonus. Here we do another 10%. We should expect to be able to beat these Romans, for example, in a charge. And we are getting relatively near our own infantry here, so I don't feel too bad about risking a charge on these guys. Go up on the flank, keep it going around, keep it going around. How close are they to their support? Getting too close there. Okay, so we'll pull back. I kind of wanted to make them get into a fight very near our own infantry, which would have been much more suitable for us. But if they're going to keep well out of the way, then it's not so much of a benefit. We could try and get a javelin toss on here, but I've got to be a bit careful. These barbarian cavalry don't get a free charge on me. Maybe if we move up this way, go for a little bit of a javelin toss. You'll get to see the javelins in action here. Pull back, pull back. They're going to go for me, I think. I don't mind. Let them come. I've got to be careful about fighting too many ones. We saw we got a little bit of damage, what, 19 aggression. We didn't do a tremendous amount of damage. We got off a little bit of health there, but not a great amount. There's just a bit of a positioning game going on at the moment. If they come just close enough, I will go for them. I don't mind fighting them. I just don't want to fight them when I'm going to get them surrounded by enemy infantry as well. If you'll fight me there. Nope. Doesn't quite want to have it. Don't want it too close to them too. Right, okay, we've got some enemy cavalry coming around here by the looks of it. I'm going to try a similar thing as to what I did with the barbarians in the first game. See if we can sort of get ourselves in a flanking position. They have got an escape route if they're clever. And they are. Damn! Kind of wanted to force their hand there. I wonder if they have other support up here. You've got to bear in mind we are quicker than them. Oops, move both of you up here. But obviously you've got to be careful, don't get caught out and find a ton of enemy infantry up here or something. Those barbarians are kicking around up there, which is going to make things difficult for us, at least at the start. This has been a really slow game for us. Been unable to really attribute any damage in the way we'd like to. I'm not going to chase them the whole game. But things are kind of getting ahead. Some fights going on down here, so I think we need to start to get a bit more aggressive here, because we're going to start to find ourselves in a situation where we just lost before we've done anything. There's quite a lot of stuff up there, though, having said that. Oh, God damn it. Turn around. Come on. We're going to make a decision. We're going this way. Okay, let's see if enemy cavalry follows us. It's what I don't want to happen is to get caught with Romans and barbarians sort of sandwich, which is going to be too much for our guys to really deal with. And that's kind of my worry. The reason I'm looking over here is, one, because these juicy sort of archers going on up here. It could be a nice target for us. And we've got kind of friendly support up here as well, so it could pan out okay. But there is also coming up here. Someone's not very happy with me. Let's come around here. I see these brigands coming in. Go for charge there. We should win that charge, which we do. See, we do a good amount of damage. I'm going to go straight for my buffs and get them into the fight. Oops, that wasn't very well turned. A little bit of inattentiveness there on my part. I see those two are escaping. I'm just going to kill them. Let's get you or debuffs on you. Buffing. Much going on. Let's bring another unit out, because they're going to sit there and shoot at me. Then they can definitely die. And they've gone into the forest, which is going to help them. I'm going to struggle to get a clean charge off on them, because they're nicely put themselves around the corner. Let's try and get them a bit there. I'm having a bit of a hard time getting onto them. We killed those guys quite neatly, though. No, not you to go that way. There we go. You go over there. Now we've got our first unit back. Let's start to split up and start to get some aggression on more on these guys. And bring these guys around here. Are they still in a fight? They are. Massive micromanagement going on here. You come back. You come this way. Now you've won that fight, you come that way. Okay. So we're back on the move. We've got these archers running up here. They've got support coming up with them. but kind of they're going to get themselves a little bit boxed in here is my hope. And we shall try and take them down. Still a really close game. I think some of the issues I definitely had, obviously, while that player's unhappy, is the fact that I didn't contribute a lot right at the start of the game, which was definitely my sort of failings, which are definitely valid. I didn't contribute a lot at the start because I was kind of just unsure about where to go. So let's get there. Let's get in there. Nice and quickly. Let's get our buffs on. They've got quite a short cooldown, so we can try and use them, and they just give us that extra little bit of attack potential as we try and kill these Greek archers. I'm going to take the damage from these barbarians. Only tier 3. I'm not too worried about them. To be fair, actually, we can probably have a fair stab at just fighting them and debuffing them. Bring these guys around here. We are being captured though, so maybe we should not be doing this. Let's come around. Bring you up here, bring you up here. Ah, some brigands are coming around behind me. No, I've played that well. Sneakily got around me. Maybe we countered their charge slightly there. I don't think that's going to be enough to give me a double debuff quite like I would like. But we are sort of getting damage on them. And we are killing them off. I just don't know if it's worth it compared to the what we're receiving. Oh, watch out for the stakes there. They're going to take a lot of damage, those brigands, if they retreat through those stakes. Hopefully we can knock them into the wavering state very shortly, and then that will be enough to rout them. There we go, yeah. Minus 19 morale. Okay, let's turn our attention on these guys. Oh no, they lost the flag. Oh, it could be the flag back. They got a positive flag. No! That's not what I wanted. Let's get our buffs back on, because they've gone through the cooldown. We'll use another debuff just to sort of stop that last little bit. I can't believe we don't get a flank on them, considering we're right surrounding them at this point. Get the charge! Oof, even a last clutch charge can save yourself from a good chunk of the damage there, as you can see. But now we're really in trouble because we're now completely stuck into a really tough hand-to-hand situation. We can try and pull a unit out. Maybe our best bet. So I'm going to leave 2 units in combat and pull one out. They may do a similar sort of thing. You take damage pulling ourselves out of the combat. And then... it's a bit of a narrow gap, isn't it? I'm obviously doing it in an attempt to get a flanking maneuver to get a charge off. But it's not super effective, really. They did sort of that quite well. I've not got any strike abilities with these guys, one of the limitations of the Carthaginians. And these guys are a lot quicker than me, so I can't even get myself out of this fight. Well, we've done a reasonable amount of damage. I don't feel we contributed a lot early on, and that's kind of some of the limitations of the cavalry and also of my play style, definitely. Oh, can I save you with a morale buff? Ah, 10 is not enough, -1. Okay, you're going to rout. Try and keep ourselves buffed. It's one of the better things about these guys is this nice little buff. And as you get into the higher tiers, that becomes almost a permanent thing. Its cooldown is the same as its duration, so you can continuously cycle it. And it just gives you a nice 40% melee attack, melee defense buff, which is great. It's just at this tier, it doesn't last the full time, it only lasts 30 seconds, and its cooldown is too long at 65 at the moment. So not really a lot I can do in this situation. You know, I have my buffs are all on, debuffs are all on cooldown, so I've only just got that one back, and obviously it's too late for me to really contribute a lot to this fight. And I'm afraid it's game over. One of the risks of units compared to the barbarians is, you know, this is where the barbarians get the option. I can't really run. I tried to flank them too because they were committed to a fight, so then sometimes people were reluctant to pull their units out because obviously, you know, they take damage. So by keeping them pinned in this fight, I'm trying to get round. I was going to try and get a nice clean charge at the back, but you know, being in the forest reduces our charging potential a lot. And I couldn't run away because those barbarians are so much quicker than me, even with these guys being not that slow. So it would have been hard for me to do sort of a tremendous amount of damage. So yeah, so not the best game there. Probably not the best game to demonstrate them, but at least you just got to see the javelin toss, you get to see the debuffs in action, and they're relatively good charge. These really have the second best charge probably in the game. You will lose to Greeks, but you can normally expect to be beating Roman and Greek cavalry. Are we going to see a charge into stakes here? Oh, no, not quite. I thought they were going to run straight through those stakes and die. So, that is the Carthaginians. Yeah, really sort of middle of the road cavalry with a slightly confusing tech tree. And finally, all we've got left to take a look at is the Romans. Obviously, I should point out I've not been diving into too much depth on the consumables for each of these units. Without making this video like 2 hours long, there's so many variables. I did a separate video on that sort of about a week ago, just talking about consumables in general. It was a bit of a ramble, but more than anything, but still. And I just kind of picked based on what I'm trying to go for. Often I go for impact ones. These Romans are one of the exceptions because I just don't feel they have such a horrible charge at this tier that I felt they really needed that melee weapon damage more, which is kind of why I went for that. But anyway, so these guys are all about strength. They're slow. They're like a mobile heavy infantry. They have really good body armor values. So they get quite a lot of more body armor than the Greeks without their shields. And on top of that, they're also getting another 36 points just from their shield armor alone. So this makes them guys really tough in this sort of combat sort of situation, which is great. They have pretty poor aggression though at this tier. It does get better later on. They have a semi-decent melee attack, but their weapon damage isn't great. Their penetration isn't fantastic. So that's kind of their weakness. On top of that, they have really low mobility. And you can see that base 6.8, and with my upgraded equipment, I'm only getting another 0.3. I don't have any dash, and I only have 1 charge. So you're going to be slow. Everything else at this tier is going to be quicker than you. Later on, their aggression does get much better, though, it's worth pointing out. So their main failing as a sort of a tech tree is their real lack of mobility, and that's kind of what hinders them the most. But obviously, that's kind of their characteristics and how they play. So I'm running them as Scipio, who does have a nice section of skills, particularly his Warcry, which causes that massive morale debuff, although it's only 20 at this tier, I think. So, let's hop into a battle with our Romans and see if we can get on a bit better than we did with our Carthaginians. So, we are loading in with our Roman cavalry. Looks like we've done a little bit better on the matchmaking front this time. Being top tier. We've had mostly tier 6 games, I think, so far through these playthroughs. So yeah, we'll see how we get on. I think initially I may just head up to here, because that's going to give me the option then to not stray too far from the centre if they make a push, but also to give me this sort of area down here if quite a lot of cavalry comes this way, or if someone tries to make a sneaky rush up here onto the plain at the top. So yeah, we'll see how that serves us, at least as a start anyway. There used to be, a couple of patches ago, there used to be a watchtower right in the middle here, and it was very overpowered for this side of the map because it used to give visibility over this whole area, but obviously it was brilliant for making decisions at the start of the game because you can just sort of see everything you want to do and make your decisions accordingly. Looks like quite a lot of infantry is coming down here. I'm going to push hard straight for the forest, I think. Yeah. See if I can hide myself in this forest before I get spotted. It may be possible. We might stand a chance of getting sort of the jump on someone if they're not expecting me. So let's go somewhere like there. So we've got some tier 4 Romans here, but we've also got some of our own tier 4 Romans coming down here. We've also got some war dogs. They're establishing themselves there, okay. And there's also some hostility in the middle of the map. Not making any moves immediately. You know, even though you are very heavy as these Roman cavalry, I don't really want to be taking on hostility frontally without any sort of allied support. Although it does look like these guys are now starting to move up. What are they? Barbarian warriors. Gotta be a bit careful, because obviously we've got to think about base and everything as well. Looks like maybe our war dogs. I think with the team we've got, just a little bit of encouragement may be required to get this sort of thing started. But I think once we're going, we should be good. So there's Roman cavalry. We don't quite know where they've gone. Ow, just got peeled. That was actually surprisingly painful. Ah, and again. We're going to get hit by these Roman cavalry, basically. Let's bring myself down. I'll take the fight. Charge early. They're going to run straight into it. Okay, and they were too late on their own charge. Straight in with everything. We're going to get re-engaged by these hostility by the looks of it, so this is going to be quite painful. But the benefit is that I would have thought it's going to give a good opportunity for allies to come up. These have really nicely bunched together, which is obviously very bad for them. And we should now be able to sort of get the upper hand in this, I would expect. We're having a bit of a hard time with this fight, I've got to say. Our archers are now going in. Yeah, we're starting to take these guys down pretty quickly. That unit is pretty well dead. We'll keep cycling our strikes. So let's push around here. Have they gone into the Perseverance? They actually haven't. Alright, a bit late on the charge there on both of them, but we got it in the end. Let's see if we can get maybe a flank on one of these. I'm going to go in Oath of Perseverance on all of them, fight this one out. Oh, a bit unfortunate though, just as those enemy archers make themselves visible. They are now oathed. Okay, I'm going to pull this unit out. The complications of this fight is quite intense. So now I want to get nicely through the middle of these archers. Clip as many of them as we can on the charge. Okay, nice. That unit has got some surprise flanks, so it's going to have a bit of a hard time by the looks of it. We both strike each other at the same time. Whatever we do, we really can't afford to rout in this sort of situation. Now we're fighting these archers. We are superior, but we have got surprise flanks, which isn't ideal, and they're sticking on as well. So it's made our morale actually really quite low. And we are taking damage from these archers. Keep our strikes up. And we're not really winning this cavalry fight over here as much as I would have expected us to. And we're going to drop into a wavering state very soon, which is invariably going to be quite bad for us. We are out damaging these archers, but not tremendously well, are we? Had a bit of a hard time with that, it's got to be said. Their archers are doing as much damage to them, though, as they are to us, so it's not so bad. Looks like some of their units are being decimated by our friendly archers now. This is kind of the problem with some of the Romans at this tier. Their aggression points are really quite painfully low. We are at risk of getting recharged by these guys, or they're going to be going for our own archers. Yeah, I think they're looking to go for our own archers by the looks of things. But you can see it's pretty neck and neck. We've done about 12,000 to them. They've done probably about a similar amount of damage to us. Just keep cycling our damage where we can, and then it looks like we're going to be getting some support from our own Hastati very soon, which probably is going to tip this fight in our favour, and is hopefully going to be enough for us to sort of at least win this fight and at least have some semblance of unit strength left alive at the end, is obviously what we want. It's obviously much more of a fight than I should have got into. Use our war cries. Okay, that lowers their morale. I'd probably rather the archers stop firing now, which it looks like they are doing. Oh, there we go. They've gone to minus 61 on the morale. That's perfect. That's one. Can we get sufficiently flanked on them? Set minus 17. That'll do for me. Oh no, 3. Have I got a war cry back? I haven't. There we go. Minus 5. Come on. There we go. They're dead anyway. Nice. Okay. Well, that was a lot more of a fight than I had intended to get into. It wasn't particularly well played on my part. So what's our base looking like? There's a fair bit of stuff they're defending. There is a lot of stuff kicking around, though. I don't know what happened to the enemy archers. Presumably they realised their potential peril and got the hell out of dodge, which was obviously the right thing for them to do. I just don't know where they've gone now. I'm going to sort of flank round this way a little bit. This is our own base, right? Yeah, we should be able to detect them without too much problem. So let's head up this way. I'm probably going to send a unit that way because I can see some of the archer fire coming out of this forest down here. So I'm trying to fulfill 2 roles here. I'm going to try and go and assist with the base cap. And I'm going to try and push around here and see if I can find those enemy archers as well, because they annoyingly got away from me last time and I don't want to let them do that again. Okay, but there's loads of Hastati, so run away. How's this base cap looking? Not too bad. Let's go around here. I'm going to do a little bit of a brave move here, and I'm going to rear flank these guys.
Charge!
And see how this works for us. Will that give me a rear flank? A left flank. That's not really what I wanted, to be honest. Come on, can I have another flank, please? I'm going to activate my war cry. Not going to be enough, though. They're trying to pull out by the looks of it. No, unless I'm going to get another flank, which I'm not. Let's pull out of there. We didn't take too many losses there. That's still well worth doing. Okay, there those other archers. Look, I've spotted them. Now, the question is there anything else behind them which is going to stop me from flanking around to get to them? We shall see. I'm going to push around this way. Try and keep myself out the forest because I'm slow at the best of times. It looks like we may actually end up capping out there, basically. Is there anything there to defend? There's actually not. I think we're just going to win on capture. It's been a really close fight, though, the whole game. I almost would rather have fought it out. But, you know, we should always be going to the win over anything. So we did get the capture. Nice. We probably would have been able to get round to those archers if we'd had a bit more time. So, yeah, hopefully that kind of gives an impression of what the Romans are like. It wasn't particularly well played on my part, but they do have really low aggression at this tier, which kind of makes them hard. But you saw how resilient they were. You know, we were in that cavalry fight, duking it out with the other Romans, both in oath. For absolutely ages, we got shot at by archers. You know, and even the enemy Romans, you know, the equivalent to us, once they got engaged by the Hastati, eventually they went down. But they held on for minutes and minutes and minutes in a situation that wasn't in their favour. So it just goes to show how strong they are and how you can just slowly build up a bit of aggression, even if you're not doing a tremendous amount. So, yeah, the Romans can be really nice for that. They're just the toughest unit in the game, and that's kind of what their strength is. You know, they're never going to be manoeuvrable, they've never got a great charge, but they're tough, they're strong, and that's what makes them a good unit. So really, that rounds up all the 4 different types of cavalry currently in the game. I don't think there's anyone that's necessarily hugely better than another, because they all vary, and they all have sort of certain points and high points in their tiers where they're particularly good compared to others. You know, the Carthaginians are quite nice at tier 8, and I think they're supposed to be quite good at tier 10, but they're quite bad at 6, 7 and 9. So, you know, it's kind of weighing that up sort of thing. I think if you're really new to the game, then you can't go too far wrong with starting with the Barbarian Cavalry, because they do give you a lot of options. They can be one of the harder ones to play, though, in the sense that they're so much speed, kind of really micro-intensive. That's one of the things I found really hard at the beginning. It's also worth saying that whatever you do, please don't blob up your units. Don't just form them into a mass and go around like that, because you get a massive disadvantage from doing that in terms of your charge ability, and you're committing all your units into one sort of mass. So if you get shot at by archers, you're going to take loads of damage. Always keep them spread out in a line. You know, use them independently of each other. It's harder at first. You'll find it really hard to do. Because you have to start to micro and you're trying to look at different units while you're being engaged in different places, and it's hard, but keep with it, and eventually it's worth learning how to do it properly. And if you can do it with the barbarians, then you can do it with anyone, because he's easily the quickest and hardest to do it with. So if you've stuck with this video this long, then well, thank you for sticking through what's probably going to be like 40 minutes or something of talking about cavalry, which is an awfully long time. But if you have, please give the video a like. Let me know any questions you have in the comments down below, any comments on my gameplay, or my poor gameplay in places, certainly. Anything you think I did well, or any questions you have, I'm going to be happy to answer them. And yeah, be sure to subscribe to the channel for lots more Total War Arena content, and I shall see you all on the next video.